That became our vision. That became our purpose. I think more and more we would start living in the age to come. We would start living by the power of the age to come. That's a part of that entering that door that is open in heaven, that place of access. Revelation 4, the door that stands open, and I don't see anywhere that it's ever been closed. But I think this year you're going to see a lot more people entering that door. And I'm just throwing this out. We can enter it at will. And every one of us right now are as close to God as we want to be. If we seek him, we'll find him. We draw near to him, he'll draw near to us. Now, I'm preaching to a choir. Anybody get up this early and come out in this cold? You're hungry. You're after God. I have no question about that. And, but you know, Jesus is Jacob's ladder. That's what he told Nathanael when Nathanael was impressed by one word of knowledge. I saw you under the fig tree. The Lord said, you're going to see something better than that. You're going to see the messengers of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man. And it is that progressive revelation of who he is by which we enter, by which we ascend. And in Hebrews 6:1, when it talks about the basic doctrines of the faith, when it says leaving the elementary teachings about the Christ and going on to maturity, he doesn't mean we leave the teachings about the Christ. We leave the elementary teachings about Christ and go on to the more advanced teachings of Christ. It's all about him, seeing him and being changed into his image and growing up in all things into him. We're told in Ephesians, the ultimate conclusion of all things, everything is going to be summed up in him. He is the ultimate purpose of God, and he is the ultimate purpose God has for us. You want to know your purpose? Be conformed to the image of Christ. You want to understand your trials? Just look at them in view of how they're changing you into his image. How they're being used to change you. And you know, one of the basic, we're told in 1 Corinthians 10 that everything that happened to Israel in the wilderness talks about how they were baptized in the water and in the cloud and all this. And then it goes on to say in verse 11, those things were written for our instruction upon whom the ends of the ages have come, because everything they went through as a type in the wilderness, we have to go through. And we will go through every one of those trials. Now, they left Egypt a great mixed multitude, or a mob. Think about this. Before they got to the Red Sea, they were marching in martial array. One thing we've got to get, God is a martial God. He calls himself that. He calls himself Lord of hosts or Lord of armies over 10 times more than all of his other titles. He is a military leader. He says, I am a warrior. There's a saying in the military, there are soldiers and then there are warriors. Not everyone's a warrior. I mean, soldiers who are not warriors by nature can still do heroic things. They're desperately needed because there are not many warriors. But the warriors, they thrive in the midst of battle. They were made for it. They run to the sound of battle, not away from it. But our God is a warrior. Jesus is the captain of the host. And I think we have to take on certain aspects of his martial demeanor, his military demeanor. And my last two books were about that. The Army of the Dawn, how this relates. Now, we're an army, we don't have carnal weapons. We're not supposed to. Some of us do. But you know what I'm talking about. We're not an army sent out to wound people and kill them or conquer them. We're sent out to heal them and set them free. You know, and the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, they're spiritual. It's the power of the truth, the power of love, the power of all the gifts of the Spirit and all the fruit of the Spirit. We have different, but there's still a martial mentality I think we have, where I know in just a couple of ways this applies that we've got to get if we're going to get there from here, or if we're going to get anywhere from here and not be the mob that we tend to be right now in the body of Christ. I know when I went in the military, now I already had an assignment when I went in. I got a high enough score on the entry thing, I could choose what I wanted to do. But even if you didn't get that, you took a battery of tests as soon as you went in, and they knew exactly what you would be good at and what you wouldn't be good at, and you got assigned to that. And then you went from, basic training to the different schools or advanced training, whatever you were called to do. I was in the Navy, and I was in naval aviation, so most of our stuff had to do with airplanes and then how the airplanes relate to ships like aircraft carriers. But, we talk about in Ephesians 4, we're not, it says we're not going to get there without the equipping of the saints. And it goes on to talk about the proper functioning of each individual part. Most Christians don't even know their part. One thing we learned in the military, right away you knew what you were going to do. And you didn't just get taught. I think overall, most of the ministry in the body of Christ right now is teaching oriented. We mix in the gifts and all to minister to people, but most of what we do is teaching.